Hello, welcome to another Pike's Progress video. This is part 2 of the fly rod build, and today we're going to be assembling the cork handle and turning it on the lathe. Got a few design changes to talk about and a little bit of unboxing as well, so come down here and take a closer look. You'll remember from the first video I said when we was constructing the cork handle I wanted different colours and was going to do some inlay work on the to make it custom. So we've done some testing, and these coloured rings, these are rubberised cork. It looks like it's made from lots of pieces of chopped up cork compressed together with a rubber solution, hold them together, and you'd have these on the very ends of a cork handle. And this is tough, much tougher than cork, and it prevents the edges of the cork being knocked off if you're just clumsy putting it down. That's what these are used for, but I'm using them for the colour. Now, we did some experiment cuts with them, and I found that they was very difficult to work with. These are the kind of diamond pieces that we will be using. You see how the cork piece is much smaller than the rubber one. Well, the reason is when we're sawing it, because it's rubberised, it tends to stretch and tear. It doesn't get a clean cut at all. It's very difficult to work with. Also, on the very end of the fighting butt of the rod, I was going to use one of these cork rings, but it's going to have a hole in it. I mean, that's not what we want, so I did order some solid rubberised cork pieces, and they came, although they're solid and it's just right for finishing off the rod, you can see it's a completely different colour. So that's not going to work for us. So what I did, and they're actually slightly bigger in diameter than the other corks as well. So to use what we've got, I drilled out the centre of a couple of these solid ones and turned it down on the lathe so it's exactly the same diameter as the corks that we're going to be using it. And we did a couple of diamond inlays using these pieces, and I'm not happy with these at all. There's a lot of gaps. You're going to need a lot of filler in there, and the size difference as well, because the rubberised cork, when it was being cut, it was stretching and tearing rather than being cut. We've ended up with the diamond shape too big compared to the cork one. So we got it back to the drawing board with this rubberised cork. It's not going to work. So we had a look out there and saw what else was available, and we found these. Now, remembering it's a blue blank on the rod, excuse me, we found some blue cork burls. Again, this looks like it's made from chopped up pieces of cork held together with some kind of adhesive, but it's got this blue tinge to it. And I'm going to be able to work with this. This is just a soft material, the same as normal cork, so I'm going to be able to use this, do the sawing, the cutting, the sanding. It's all going to happen at the same rate as the genuine cork, the original corks. So that's going to work. We're going to go with a slight change, but we're going to have a blue handle, or like 50% blue, 50% cork is what I'm probably going to go for. Also on the fighting butt, so we're not left with a hole. Obviously, if we use one of these, we're going to be left with a little hole at the very end of the rod, and that's not what we want. So we managed to get some solid cork rings, so we can use a solid piece right at the very end of the rod, and we're not going to have a hole there. So that's good. We're happy with that. We know where we're going now with the rod handle. Bit of an unboxing video as well. What else have we got? We have now got our colour locker. This is, I'll turn it around in the bag, U40 Colour Lock 2. This is going to be painted onto the rod whippings, and it's going to soak into the threads and dry. I'm going to do this before we do the epoxying, and this will protect the threads, that is, from any colour changes like UV light or reaction with the glue or anything like that. That's going to lock the colour. So we're going to use some of that. This is our epoxy. This is the same, this is U40 from the same manufacturers, and this is a two-part epoxy. There's plenty in there. I'll probably do 3 or 4 rods out of that, but this is the epoxy for the rod whippings. What else do we have? This is our winding check. Now until I've mocked up the handle and the corks of the rod, I couldn't order this because I had to measure the diameter of the rod blank just in front of the reel fitting. And all this does, this is going to be glued into place at the end of the rod, and that's going to finish off the cork handle. It's going to seal off between the cork and the blank. So that's a winding check. So we've got that in place, and we've also got one of the things that whip on, and this is a Fuji folding hook keeper. This will go just in front of the handle, underneath the blank, and it'll be able to fold down flat when it's not being used. I can fold it over. It's quite a big one, this. I had to ask for a bit of advice, but this is the biggest one, and it opens out 5mm. I'm thinking that we're going to use in Pike flies. They're going to be quite big, substantial hooks, so I needed to make sure that the hook keeper was going to be big enough for these hooks for the hook to go into. So that's a winding check. No, that's a winding check. That's our hook keeper. We've got our corks now. We've got our handle. Let's get making a cork handle. This is a cork jig. These are quite expensive. They're about £40. You can see this one's well worn. I've had this a long time. And what you do with these, your cork will go in, and these channels will provide the perfect angle, so you can slice that cork into 8 pieces like a pizza. And then you will do a light coloured cork, and you will do a dark coloured cork, and then rebuild them and glue them back together, so it goes alternate light dark light dark light dark. And if you was doing any checkerboard effects, like this is a rod that I built a few years ago, and that's how this checkerboard effect is made. You can also use it to cut out this V shape, and you would do that with a light coloured cork and a dark coloured cork, and join them light and dark again. You would do that twice, and when they're turned back to back, this is how you get the inlaid diamonds. And lastly, you can put your cork in there, and you can take a slice off it, which would slice it into what I think it's 1/4 and 3/4. If you wanted a half, you can pop a washer in there just to hold it up a bit. Best saw to use with these cork jigs I've found is one of these. This is a jeweler's saw, very cheap off eBay. This cost me about £8, and it came complete with 60 blades. So that's very cheap, and it works very well. This is a razor saw, a model maker's razor saw. These are very good, again, but they're a bit more expensive than that jeweler's saw, and the teeth will wear out pretty quickly because the blade is very thin. So when you come to the bottom of each cut and it hits the metal, the teeth dull very quickly. I have in the past used one of these. I think it's a coping saw or a fret saw. This takes off too much material, and this is not the saw for the job. So the best one is the jeweler's saw. I'm just going to cut out my triangle pieces to make these diamonds and the pizza sections as well. So you slice up a light coloured cork, and then you slice up a dark coloured cork, and then you reassemble them, gluing them together so it's alternate. You see, I've just stood the jig on a couple of cork rings here. It's just to lift it up off the tabletop so I can get right to the bottom of the cut. But it really takes no effort at all cutting this cork once you use the right saw for it. So here are the pizzas, light and dark. You see, I'm just using a mat pin here just to hold the little sections while I'm gluing them. Lesson learned for next time. I do need to wear gloves when using this this high 8 glue. It's very, very sticky, and it leaves a coating on your fingertip that's days to wear off. So I'll use a cable tie, and it'll pull all the 8 pieces into near enough a full circle. Just pop in a 6mm screw and a nut through, and it'll just keep that central hole open as well. Once it starts to dry, you can take these off. Just leave it on for perhaps first 5 or 10 minutes until the glue's got a good hold of the cork. Right. Here are my inlaid corks. You see, these are the 2 V-shaped segments, and glued dark wood and then glued back into the light wood. When they're together, it gives you a bit of a diamond effect. And these are the ones like pieces of a pizza, like I showed you. I'm going to need to flatten these off on a little bit of sandpaper. But before we get there, I'm going to show you this. This is a full Wells handle. I bought this one ready-made. One, to show you what it is that we're going for, the shape and the length. And two, we're going to use this to take measurements at various diameters so that we can replicate that on the lathe. Now, there is one interesting feature, is this hole here has been enlarged. It's been inlet by the suppliers for, they've done it for me on request, and that is to fit this recessed reel seat. So we've got to find a way of doing that with our own corks, because we're making a handle from scratch. I have found a way, and there it is. This is one of the blue bill corks, and that fits just nicely in there. Now, I've done this to the cork before we've glued them, because once it's glued, I didn't fancy being able to hold that straight and then using a drill. So I've used my drill press to do this. I'll quickly show you the method that I've used. I've got a scrap of wood and I've bolted it down to the table of my pillar drill. It's important not to move the table of the drill again once it's been set. This is a 6mm drill bit, and you can see there I've drilled a 6mm hole in the scrap wood. So I'm going to get my cork that I want to recess out for the reel seat and just put it on that drill bit, and this is double-sided tape. And I'm going to slide the cork off the drill bit and onto the sticky tape. The central hole of the cork is now in the axis of the drill. This is a 20mm Forstner bit. I got this from a set that I got from Screwfix. Got a set of 5, I think it was. It wasn't very much, about £8. If I drill down so the top of the Forstner bit is level with the top of the cork, it seems to be a good place where it fits into the reel seat. So we're going to slowly drill that through. Couple more millimeters. This is a 20mm spade bit. I've cut the guiding tip off, just ground it flat there. And I've also cut the shank down a little bit shorter, just to help with any run out that it might have. But we know that that's 20mm. So I've got some 240 grit paper, and I'm running it around the edges of the spade bit like that. And I'll just tape that closed. Let's just have a measure on that. Just shy of 22mm. Need about 21.5mm. But I have found that it does kind of cut it undersized. The walls of the cork seems to spread out as you sand in the inside of it. So there's our sanding bit installed. I'm going to run the drill again and push this in till it bottoms out. feel it bottomed out there. Take our sanding bit out. There's our reel seat. Let's carefully just lift up that cork up, let the double-sided tape off. Here we go, just the job. It's a good fit. Happy with that. Now I appreciate that not everybody has got a drill press, but I imagine that it could be done if you're very careful using a hand drill. So this is going to be the first cork, and we're going to start sticking these together onto the mandrel ready for turning. I've got my corks arranged now, how we're going to glue them together. Got my diamond pieces in here and separated by a natural cork accent ring. Made some marks various places just so that when I assemble it, it's going to be lined up properly. Got the blue burls at the end, and I've got a checkerboard piece which is going to separate the blue burl from the natural cork at each end. When it's finished on the lathe, I'm hoping for a hearth joint type appearance where a shaft is interlocked, but that's what we're going for. I'm going to wear gloves when I'm using this glue. It's very sticky, get it on your fingertips, it'll be there for days. So I've learnt my lesson from the first time. So I'm going to take this apart, I'm going to glue it up and clamp it shut. Probably put it on time lapse for this. That dog of mine, he decides to bark at the most inopportune moments sometimes, just when I'm filming. Maybe I should take him out fishing more. Anyway, you see I've got my gloves on now. I don't want to get any more of that glue on my fingers. Like I say, it dries like a super glue. And it don't wash off, it's got to wear off, takes a couple of days, it's horrible. So I'm throwing them onto that 6mm mandrel. What I've done, I've given it a good coating of Vaseline. And when I put the gluey corks on it, hopefully the Vaseline's going to stop the corks from sticking to the actual mandrel. I want to take it out and replace it with a 6mm steel mandrel for actually turning it on the lathe. But you could do it on this aluminium one. I'm going to give it just a nip up just until the glue starts to leak out. Once the glue's gone off, it's nowhere near as sticky then, and it's given me a chance now just to line up those diamond pieces before they take a final set. So with our cork handle all glued together now, we've got it on the lathe. And I'm going to take a caliper measurement off the high spots, which is at the two ends and in the middle from the template. I'm going to keep referring back to that template handle that we've bought. I'm going to keep referring back to it with the calipers. What I'm looking for in this first bit is just to get it like a cylinder shape. So all the unevenness. I'm using quite a heavy paper. It's a 120 grit. And I found it best to use very thin strips, like you see here, rather than one big piece. Well, once I got the middle and the two ends at the right diameter, it's time to start looking at the two scallops that are in it. Got to keep going back and vacuum clean all your dust up because it makes such a mess. It's such a soft material, it really comes off quickly. So I'll get them calipers on them the two narrow scallops that are in the handle there. We're going to take it off this one until we can get it down. Again, it's just going steady, very thin strips of paper. I think I use a 120 grit for actually taking cork off. But I try and stop when I'm about 1 mil or 2 mil, just short of my mark. And then eventually we're going to get it closer and closer to the shape that we want. Then I'll change papers then, go on to a 240 grit. It'll take much less off, you get more control on it. And you can see I'm just shaping them scallops out now, and the paper runs across the middle bit, just like that. There's no pressure on that paper at all. I don't want to take anything off the middle at all. You see I'm there, and a little bit tight on that one, a little bit more off that one. It's a bit like painting a car or decorating a room. It's all in the preparation, 99% of it. This job actually took 10 minutes while it was on the lathe. It took 10 minutes to get it to shape, after all the preparation and gluing and everything. So it really pays to take your time here. You keep switching the drill on and off, and just keeping taking measurements. You can take as much off as you want, but you can't put it back. Making sure the ends are nice and square there. And eventually we'll end up on the smoothest paper I've got. It's a 400 grit, wet and dry. It's more of a polish than anything. There's the finished article. I was really happy with that. There's a few little pits here and there it's a natural material cork. I did consider filling them with some cork filler, but you know, it's a natural material. I like it. I like it as it is. Yeah, really happy. So I'm going to do the fighting butt now, which used 3 pieces of cork. There's the blue burl, a natural cork, and then a pizza arrangement like I've done in the middle. And again, it's the same thing on the fighting butt. Get it into cylinder shape first. Knock all the rough edges off, all the excess glue. Don't want to take much off this. I'm just going to get it cylinder, and then just doing a little bit of shaping, but that's pretty much it. Didn't take much at all, this didn't. Just doing a final polish off there with 400. Yeah, really happy with that. We're just using a special rod building reamer here. It's going to open out the 6mm hole that goes all the way through the cork handle. This reamer, it's a tapered fiberglass rod, and it's got an abrasive like a sandpaper glued onto it, and it'll open out that hole for us. And just keep going a little bit at a time until that cork handle is going to slide down into the correct position on the blank. Now, you can make these reamers yourself, a bit of an old rod section, but they're really cheap to buy. They're about £9 each. You can get them in different sizes and different grades, but I've only used the smallest size on this one. It's fine for this. Cork handles.
4 candles.
No, cork handles, and I've got 3 of them. Well, why have I got 3? We remember we got one of them, a ready-made one. This was so we can get the dimensions and show you what it is that we're going for. We got one that you saw me make in the video. Now, when I cut out the diamonds and the surround for that diamond, we left over with the opposite pieces around. So using up the corks that I've got, I've made 2 cork handles. One's a mirror image of the other one, so I can decide which one that I like the best. Personally, I like this one. It's got more of a dark colour to it. Yeah, we managed with the fighting butt as well. We've done a bit of matchy there on the fighting butt. That matches both of them really. I've got to make a final decision before I glue these together which handle it is that I'm going to use. Let me show you what they look like. This is my preferred one. They've been reamed, this one's not been reamed out, but these two, they've been reamed out with the reamer that you saw me using in the garage. This take out that middle hole, take it down to the diameter of the rod blank. So that just fits in there, and I also managed to recess out the same way using a spade bit and sandpaper, recess out the fighting butt just where the screw goes in there, and it now comes flush to the reel seat, which is very nice. There we go. So there we are. I think that's my preferred one. I've got a choice of 2 winding checks as well. We've got this one, which I like the way that follows the taper. You probably can't see it on the camera, but it follows the taper of the end of the handle. That's very nice. And then I've also got a minimalist one. Let's have a look at that. And that's a minimal one. I like that as well. I really don't know which way that I should go. Yes, it's my wife's birthday today, so maybe she should decide. Wife, which winding check, the big one or the little one? The one I've got, the big one? Yeah. The big one. I like the big one. Oh, well. Yep, so let's get these gluing together. Now we're going to glue the cork handle on then in the time-honoured fashion of building up some masking tape arbours. This is just so that there is no play between the reel seat and the rod blank. It's going to be a nice solid fit. So I'm going to get them tape arbours built up until the inner of that sleeve just slides over. It's a nice tight fit. The actual cork handle, there's no play at all in that. I'm going to glue that straight on. I've scuffed up this area of the rod blank with some paper as well. Give it a nice key to grip to. It's 2-part epoxy. And then before the glue dries, I just want to make sure that the pattern on that handle is the right way as much as I can. So more about this in a minute, but yeah, quick get this done before that glue goes off. And then while I've still got a bit of glue, let's get the winding check glued on as well. There we are then, guys. We've got the handle onto the rod. We've just finished off gluing the winding check into position. You've got the reel on the rod, you've noticed. We'll have more about the reel in the next video. But I've got this on so that we can take a 90 degrees reference point and get the reel hanging perfectly vertically. This is so that we can line up the reel seat with the spine of the rod and the patterns in the handle. Also got this is just a stand of a dial indicator. I've put a sharp pencil in the end there. You can use a block of wood and a piece of copper wire and use the tip of the wire as your pointer. But what I've done is I've got the perfect centre of the blank that way and the centre of the blank at the thin end, and that pencil, once the two ends are matching, we've adjusted the rod until the centre point is matching the tip of the pencil. That is now the centre point of the line of the rod, disregarding the taper. It means I can touch off now at these points, and the tips of those diamond inlays are perfectly 90 degrees to the top of the rod. They're perfectly on the side, in other words. That's all I've done there. Just used my dining room table as kind of like a surface plate, because it's a known flat-ish surface. So we've got the rod all glued up now. Next episode, we've got to wrap the rings on, we've got to get the hook keeper on, we've got to get all the trim bands done, we've got to get the epoxy clear coat finished, well, it's even started. We're going to do some thread art at the butt section, so we've got a lot of marking out and wrapping to do there. We've got a ways to go yet, and I've not even looked at flies. So yeah, thanks for watching. Please come back for the next video. Subscribe if you've not already subscribed. If you do subscribe, just drop me a comment, just tell me that you've subscribed, or just say hello, and I will come back and say hello to you, see how you're doing. So keep safe everyone, and I'll speak to you in a couple of weeks.